Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Shoemaker Report with Hoshea Allen. We'll call this part 2 to what we talked about last time, because in last class out here in the woods, very nice, pleasant place to be, we learned that the Jewish people received the Torah at Har Sinai through this tremendous blowing of the Shofar. And we learned from a pasuk in Amos, the prophet Amos, that the Shofar, the Kol Shofar, is the sound of, it's supposed to incite fear in people. So how could it be, we learned that, how could it be that the Jewish people, when they were hearing the shofar, were afraid? It's a scary thing, much like, the sirens that go off here in Israel these days can scare people. How could it be that that's causing people to be afraid, and yet somehow it's leading to a great thing, which is the simcha of receiving the Torah? So we learned in the last class that yes, the original purpose, you might say, the original step in the Kol Shofar, the voice of the Shofar, is, yes, to trigger fear, but not in and of itself. The purpose is that fear would finally drive out all of the crookedness from our heart, and then we would have a straight heart, and with a straight heart, Hashem can pour down into it and place within our heart simcha. And that's really what the purpose of the voice of the shofar, or the blowing of the shofar was at Matan Torah. It was so that we would really have simcha. Not that we would have fear, but that fear, in a sense, was needed to drive out the crookedness. And then, once you have a straight heart, because you drove out all the crookedness, all the ugliness in our hearts, now with a straight heart, Hashem could in a sense, slip into that heart, His own simcha, nothing that we could sort of conjure or concoct on our own. That's what we learned last time. But we still have a question which we didn't really fully address or unpack last time, which was this bracha that we make every single day during Shemona Esrei, 3 times a day. We say, Tekah b'shofar gedola cheirutenu. We ask Hashem to blow the great shofar for our freedom. So we want to be afraid? Somehow fear is going to breed freedom? Well, we already addressed that in a way. If you understand that what's really happening, we want Hashem to blow the shofar. Because why? Because then what's going to happen? We'll be afraid, kila, like we learned last time, and through that fear, we'll end up with a straight heart, and with a straight heart, we'll end up with simcha as a gift from Hashem, and it's the simcha that we really want. So people that want to have simcha, they want to be happy. You need to focus on that particular bracha. When you make that bracha, when you say Tekah b'shofar gadol acheru, you should have tremendous kavanah, and every single letter and every single sound and every single word have tremendous kavanah with that particular bracha, because that bracha encapsulates happiness. It encapsulates true simcha of Hashem. Tekah b'shofar gadol. Yes, you're going to have to go through a path, and that path is going to lead you to maybe face some things you don't want to face. But if you're willing to do that, the end of the line, kilu, will be tremendous simcha. So really, if you want simcha, you need to have tremendous kavanah for that bracha. Well, that's a bit of a side point, but let that be. How is this all tied to freedom? Because it says here in that pasuk, in that bracha again, it says what? It says Tekah b'shofar gadol l'cheirutenu, for our freedom. So many people would say, what do you mean we're praying for freedom? Are we already free? I mean, didn't Hashem give us the Torah already? And isn't the Torah, doesn't it encapsulate freedom? Isn't there freedom already in the Torah? You have freedom in the Torah, so we already have the Torah. You should already be free. Well, look around you, folks. Something's missing here. It doesn't look like there's a whole lot of freedom going on around here, right? So ultimately speaking, yes, there's supposed to be freedom in the Torah. Like it says by Chazal, they said there's a pasuk that where Hashem carved into the tablets the very letters of the 10 Commandments, of the Aseret Dibrot. And the word used there is the word charut, to mean engraved. And Chazal say, that's, yes, but now think about it as a drasha. As a drasha, let's not read the word as charut. Let's read it as cheirut. What do you mean? In other words, freedom. The fact that the pasuk says that Hashem, He engraved the words of the 10 Commandments into those luchot, and the word is charut, that He engraved, we should understand and learn from that there's a concept of cheirut, of freedom, that is the result of Hashem embedding and carving out in those stone tablets the very essence of the Torah. Well, very nice. Well, that being the case, then why don't we still have freedom today? Somebody could say, well, I'm free. Yeah, really? Prove it, basically, right? To see how far your freedom's going to go. We live in a place and in a world as a whole where there's literally almost no freedom anywhere. So we do learn from that pasuk, however, that there is freedom in the Torah. And if so, what happened? I mean, look, we went into captivity. We went into Babylonian captivity. We went into Persian Median captivity. We went into gallows from the Greeks, and then from the Romans, and it's gone on. That's been going on for close to 2,000 years. And I'll throw into that the captivity added on to that by the sons of Ishmael, and then on top of that the captivity because of the Erev. And you've got a lot of galut, a lot of captivity, not much freedom going on around here. What happened? What happened? If we have the Torah, and the Torah is supposed to have Cheirut in it, freedom, where'd it go? So the answer is a very, very subtle one, and we need to understand there's a difference between the first set of tablets, the first Luchot, and the second set of tablets, the second Luchot. What's the difference? Well, in both of them, Hashem wrote it out. Hashem carved out the Aser Dibrot in both of them. But the actual tablets themselves, how they were constructed, where they came from, how they were made, that's what's different. In the first set, Hashem carved out the tablets, He prepared the tablets, and He engraved into those tablets the Ten Commandments. It was all from Hashem, all of it. And the second set, after the great, terrible sin of the golden calf, when Moshe pleaded and pleaded and pleaded and begged and begged and begged and sacrificed themselves with such tremendous miserior, never said it's literally impossible for us to understand. And Hashem said, okay, fine. I'll forgive you. Sorry, I'll forgive them as you have said, Moshe. So then he told Moshe, this time, you carve out the tablets. I'll still write the Ten Commandments in them with the finger of Hashem. I'll still do that. That I won't relinquish. But the tablets themselves, this time, you're going to have to do it. You're going to have to carve those tablets out yourself. In other words, the second tablets is like a team effort. It's a team effort between Hashem and the tzaddik. And that is something very profound. And that's what we've been living under ever since the sin of the golden calf. Now the question is, which of those two tablets did Chazal make their statement when they said, don't read it charut, rather read it cheirut, don't read it carved, rather read it freedom? Which one of those two was it said about? Do you know? You look it up, you'll see, in fact, that the truth of the matter is that Chazal said that statement about the first pair of tablets, not the second pair. There was ultimate existential eternal freedom in the first set. Why? Because that came from the 50th gate. That was all from Hashem. Moshe Rabbeinu went up there. The people were so pure, as we learned last time. They were stood there at the Har Sinai, and all the zone was gone. They'd cleansed themselves 100% from all of the filth and pollution from the snake, all the way back to the sin of Adam and Chava in the Gan Eden. It was gone. They had literally pure, total bodies. And they were literally standing at the 50th gate. And it was from that 50th gate that Hashem brought forth this Torah, gave it to Moshe Rabbeinu. But then what? We didn't wait for Moshe to come down the mountain. And we did the most horrible, horrible, like terrific in a bad way, like terrific, like terror. But a really, really bad sin that's continued on with us, and we've been bearing it and dealing with it since. And it's still not been completely atoned for. Every generation gets a piece of that terrible sin. It has to suffer from it. It has to deal with that. It has to be cleansing and kapara. So what happened? Moshe's got these wonderful, great tablets that comes from Hashem, where literally there is Cheirut, there is freedom. Why? Because that would have brought Mashiach. That would have culminated everything. The rule of the Nachash, the snake, that rule ended. Literally a whole new age would have begun. True, eternal, existential freedom was in those tablets. But we messed up and we weren't worthy to receive those tablets. And so what did Hashem tell Moshe Rabbeinu? He says, Lech, raid. Go down. What do you mean, Lech and then raid? Go, yes, go, and then raid, go down. Well, you just could have said go, walk, Lech, get out of here. But he specifically added the word raid, go down. Well, obviously he had to go down. He was at the top of the mountain. He told him, Red, go down, because he was telling him, you cannot be Mashiach now. You were all ready to be Mashiach. You had entered the 50th gate. I give you these 2 tablets, which came from the 50th gate, and you're going to take that down to the people, which is ultimate, eternal freedom. Complete end of all galut. There would never be any more galus whatsoever. No rulership from any other nations upon the Jewish people. Total freedom, freedom of mind, freedom of body, freedom of expression, total freedom in the Torah, yes. What happened? Hashem told Moshe, Red, go down. Meaning, what? You have to go down from your level. Rashi talks about this. The Mefarshim explain this out very clearly. Moshe Rabbeinu had attained the level of Mashiach. Not just Mashiach ben Yosef, but Mashiach ben David. The ultimate eternal Mashiach. That was Moshe Rabbeinu. At that very moment, when he held on to those 2 tablets. But because the people were not worthy of it and did this terrible sin, there was a disconnect between Moshe Rabbeinu and the people. So Hashem told him, you have to go down now. You have to go down and meet them where they are. You have to go down and meet them where they are. Go down to, quote, their level, Kilo. You're going to have to go down. And that's the job of a tzaddik. A tzaddik always has to go down, down, down. And the more we fall down, 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 the more we go down from door after door after door after door, generation after generation after generation, the tzaddikim have to get greater and greater and greater because they have to go farther down, 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 down without being affected, being filled with tumah that we are in, that we get trapped in. They got to go down to our mud and pull us up. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. That's Moshe Rabbeinu of every single generation. That's the great tzaddik of every single generation. And he's getting greater and greater and greater. In other words, as Rabbi Nachman says, every generation gets sicker and sicker. You need a greater and greater doctor to heal the sickness. That's the greatness of the tzaddik. It just gets better and better and better. Higher and higher and higher. Loftier and loftier and loftier. Why? To rescue us. But fundamentally, therefore, we see that Moshe had to come down. He couldn't be Mashiach then. He has to wait. He's waited a long time. And he's come back, as it says in Chazal many times. Moshe Rabbeinu comes back in every single generation. He's the head of all the tzaddikim in every single generation. He just gets higher and higher and higher and higher to rescue us more and more and more. And so what happened? He had to bring down the second Luchot. That was now a combined effect of Hashem and the tzaddik. And that's what we're living under. And that's a great and holy, wonderful thing. In fact, that's how our redemption is going to come. That's how it's going to come. But Chazal never said there was Cheirut in that. No, not Cheirut in that. We can see there's not Cheirut in that. There will be one exile after another exile after another exile, and pogrom after pogrom, and shmad after shmad. Well, as we've seen, Jewish history hasn't been a pleasant thing to look at. That's the reality of it. So what's the answer? The answer, I think, is we have to turn the second Luchot into the first Luchot. We have to do it. We have to transform the first Luchot. We have to transform the second Luchot, the one which was the combined effort of Moshe and Hashem. We have to turn that into the ideal of the first Luchot, of the real Luchot that comes from the 50th gate, where there is true freedom, where the Cheirut, the engraving, is true Cheirut, is true freedom. That comes from the 50th gate. And that 50th gate is ultimate freedom in every way that you can possibly imagine. We'll be zocheh to that. May we be zocheh to that, because that's the only way we're going to have true ultimate Cheirut, true ultimate freedom. But we have to do it this time. It's going to have to be, as they say, from the bottom up. That's the way it is. The first Luchot was, in a sense, from the top down. And the second Luchot has to be from the bottom up. Yes, we have the tzaddik and we have Hashem. It's connected. We have the lower and the higher. We have a way to ascend, but we have to hold on to the tzaddik. We have to seek out the tzaddik. He's hidden. You won't know who he is all the time. It's not so painful. He didn't walk around with a sign that says, "Hi, I'm the tzaddik of the generation." It's not how it works. So if you really want to know, you have to go seek him out, because there's always a tzaddik elyon and a tzaddik takton. Rabbi Nachman is the tzaddik elyon. He's the tzaddik above, high up in Shemayim. Nobody can comprehend that level. But there's also a tzaddik down here below who's connected to Rabbi Nachman and became just like Rabbi Nachman. Rabbi Nachman himself says that he would make people like himself, literally. That's what he says. And that's the lower tzaddik. That's the one that walks around down here in a goof, connected to Rabbi Nachman in intimate ways which we cannot comprehend. We have to seek out such a person. so that you can literally connect to both the lower and the upper, because there has to be a connection between the upper and the lower worlds. There has to be. There has to be a ladder. How do you go from down below to up above? You have to have a ladder. Okay, anyway, enough said for now. I think we explained why we're praying to Hashem, Tikah b'shofar gadol l'cheirutenu. Why are we praying to Hashem that He would sound the great shofar? Because we want ultimate freedom, because we don't have it now. We have to, in a sense, regain the essence of the first Luchot. And I believe that means we have to turn, through our own effort, Kilu, with our own effort, by connecting to Moshe Rabbeinu of every generation, we have to turn this second set of Luchot into the first, where true Cheirut is found. That's it for now. Until next time, have yourselves a great day.